Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. We're continuing our discussion with Hans Mahncke on RussiaGate, and we're now dealing with the case of General Michael Flynn and the way in which his ouster was affected, thanks to the manipulations of the Obama people and the naivete of the Trump people.
But, one thing, maybe we can segue to this, because I think it was really interesting. Do you remember when Comey was fired and Trump said, I think it was one of the networks, it was because of RussiaGate. Mm-hmm. And I think that is one of the most misunderstood, and Trump blew it by framing it that way, because we have to remember it was only a week or weeks before we had all of that live testimony when Comey, I remember he was asked, what is Gazprom? And he said he didn't know what it was. And I thought, you don't know one of the largest gas companies in the world? And then a staffer for the congressperson said, it's an oil company. No, it's a gas company, Gazprom, okay? But the thing is that Trump knew that the way the FBI was reporting on an interest in his campaign and him was wrong. And that's why he fired him. It's not because they were getting too close and the walls were coming down. No, it's just that this is a farce. This is absolutely farce. And I think I seriously fault him for framing it that way. He should have given a better explanation, because he got himself into a bind on that. I'm sorry.
It was one of those. No, exactly right. It's one of those things where his words were kind of pulled apart, and we know he sometimes expresses things in ways where he says something and then he has to clarify it and so on. And it was one of those situations. So this was the Lester Holt interview. It was right after Comey was fired, and so what he said. So Lester Holt asked something to the effect of if it had anything to do with Russia or RussiaGate or the Russia investigation, and then Trump said, yeah, as you say, he said something along the lines of, yes, it did. But then he added that it did in a sense that it will take longer than it would have taken because he fired Comey. So in a sense, he's admitting that he did something that's going to harm himself more than if he just left it alone. Yeah. But Comey was so bad that he just needed to go. But sort of that, just explaining it in that way makes it so kind of complicated that you can pull it apart and then just put out the little clip where Trump says, this was about Russia.
Yeah. Now, when we get to the point at which Robert Mueller is appointed special counsel, and what has emerged now, perhaps we had already known this, is that clearly Mueller lied before Congress by suggesting that he hadn't been a candidate for Attorney General. Oh, no, for FBI Director. So in other words, what he had said, no, I did talk to the president, I think on the day, May the 16th or whatever, but it wasn't really about my possibly being FBI Director. We were just talking about the job in general. But it now turns out that, in fact, he was talking about being appointed FBI Director, which means that there's a direct conflict of interest. There was never any, he had no business whatsoever in accepting the appointment of special counsel.
No, that's exactly right. That's the email that we just that was just released this past week, where the day after the job interview, Rosenstein emails someone within the DOJ saying, "Look, Mueller is withdrawing from FBI director." So obviously, if he withdraws on when it was at the 17th or whatever, then he then there was an interview on the 16th. So that's exactly right. But will Mueller face a penalty, for lying to Congress? Probably not. But there's another conflict which I think is one where he should have been disqualified very clearly, and that's his friendship with Comey. This whole thing is about Comey. So the whole idea is Trump fired Comey because he's obstructing justice. That's in a nutshell, that's what it's about. Because Comey's investigating Trump. Trump doesn't like it. Therefore, Trump fires Comey. So Comey is, one of the main player in the whole investigation. So there are rules, federal rules on this and laws on this, where if you are friends with someone who's a part of the investigation, and in this case, the most important person in the investigation, Comey, then you cannot be part of that investigation. I mean, this is clearly set out. Now, so were Mueller and Comey friends? And there was sort of some back and forth about this, and there's lots of books that describe their friendship. But eventually, when he went to the congressional hearing back in July 2019, he admitted on tape that he and Comey were friends. So that's all you need to know. They were friends, and he wasn't disqualified. He didn't recuse from investigating the situation involving his friend. Completely, you know, this is totally on Rosenstein. He should have never ever allowed that to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. So now we move forward. What happens now? We've seen we've had the Kleinsmith guilty plea, but he hasn't pointed to anyone else. It's like he's taken the whole thing on himself. He's sort of fallen on his sword, but without really admitting his guilt and without pointing the finger at anybody. So, is this it? Does this end?
Yeah, well, you know, George, he's just the resistance hero. You know, he's going to be feted for this, okay, that he took the fall, you know, because somebody has to be punished for it, because then that legitimizes, it gives legitimacy to the conspiracy itself. That's why they're going after it, okay? What happens now is a really big question, because, you know, you can see that Chris Wray, he's not doing anything at the FBI. Okay, it's really just quite shocking. And it seems to me that he wants to protect the institution. They got Kleinsmith. Okay, they got someone. Okay, the chain of command. You can't convince me that this rogue element all by himself. I'm sorry. You have to convince me that that is the case here. I really worry that Durham. We're just going to come up with a lot of slapping of wrists, inappropriate behavior, flagrant abuse of minor powers. You know, I worry about that, and I worry also, to be honest with you, irrespective of the findings, it shouldn't come out now. It should have come back out in May or April, because it's too close to the election. Okay. And I can tell you that they're sensitive of this happening all over again. I mean, the FBI has two huge black eyes right now, okay? And personally, looking at all of the violence and the violation of civil rights of all kinds of people in the United States, and they're not doing anything either. So it really worries me that, you know, Kleinsmith is going to be their sacrificial lamb.
No, I share your kind of pessimism there. And even if we don't know what exactly is going on with Durham, and maybe, you know, he does know something, and probably there's going to be more indictments. I hear there's, you know, you had this guy, Soma, that is one of the agents involved, that I hear there's something going on in that direction. So we'll see. So we don't know exactly what kind of might still happen. But the one thing, the one kind of observation I had with the Kleinsmith situation that just told me, you know, to be pessimistic about the whole thing was the sort of little stunt he pulled. So you might recall when the indictment came down, his lawyer, Kleinsmith's lawyer, went out there and said, "Oh, he was actually trying to do the right thing." Yep. So he inserted those words because he wanted to make it more truthful. So I was like, okay, so this lawyer is playing games with the media and whatever. But then a few days later, when they all, you know, had the court hearing, I was completely flabbergasted that they pulled the same stunt. They told the court the same story. I couldn't believe that, because I thought that was just kind of a media thing. And then when you go to court, you say, "Oh, I'm sorry, yes, I did it," and all that. No. Kleinsmith was up there and said, "No, yes, I did it, but, you know, I was trying to do the right thing," or, you know, words to that effect. So it's this sort of guilty but. And right. For a judge to accept a guilty but, I was completely just blown away. That how is that even possible? And forget about the judge.
Possible. Look how the Judge Sullivan has treated Flynn.
That's right. Well, this is a different one. This is Boasberg, but obviously Boasberg is involved with the FISA, so that's a weird thing as well. I mean, you're supposed to have random judges, but it keeps, you know, these same judges keep being pulled out of the hat. You know, that's very weird in and of itself. But even if we just forget about the judge for a moment, what about the prosecution? And these are Durham's people. They're in the room, and they have to say, no. We're not going to do it this way. We're not going to accept a yes but or guilty but plea. You know, you're going to have to just say, you did it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts. So that kind of makes me pessimistic when that happened. Yeah.
Right. And it seems like they got a guilty plea. They've got the guy. I mean, it really is an open and shut case. It's very rare to get something as juicy as that, and yet they don't seem to be getting anything in exchange. He just simply says, "Yeah, well, that's it. I did it, and it was all me, nobody else." And so, I mean, that's not a good deal for a prosecutor.
Right now, Showtime has a 2-part miniseries on Comey. I mean, Kleinsmith is going to have his when Hollywood goes back to business after the lockdown. He'll have his payday.
That's right. Of course, the biggest problem with Kleinsmith saying yes, but I tried to be true. I tried to make it more truthful, is by saying that. I mean, apart from you're not supposed to say that in court and all that. By saying that, he has basically taken out everyone else out of the equation. So we can no longer say, oh, so-and-so told Kleinsmith to do this, or right. Kleinsmith was part of some cabal that, was out there, creating fake documents or whatever. You can't say any of those things about anyone because Kleinsmith says, no, I did it because I was trying to be truthful. So you've kind of eliminated everyone else from the equation. So again, I'm not sure what's going to happen. I think they will get some kind of, not only minor, maybe sort of medium level players like this guy Soma that I mentioned, but on the bigger scheme of things, I'm pretty pessimistic, about McCabe. McCabe seems to have had his fingers in all kinds of things. Comey is a very kind of sly operator. I think Comey always had his back covered in all kinds of ways. I don't get the same sense from McCabe. So I was kind of hopeful that, maybe they could get McCabe on something. After all, he was pushing this. As soon as Comey was fired, he's the one who opened the investigation on Trump. I think the very day and so on. He lied to Congress, or no, it was an interview that he lied in, and they let that go. So I don't know. As I said, the Kleinsmith thing doesn't fill me with optimism. Yeah, that was a fiasco.
McCabe, the worst thing that happened to McCabe is he didn't get his pension, but now he's a talking head on a network. Okay.
He gets even more, yeah.
And just finally, what's the fate of Michael Flynn? What do you think is going to happen there?
Well, we're supposed to find out very soon because this en banc review is supposed to. One of the judges is retiring, who was on that review, so they're going to have to get it out before he retires, and that should be in September. So it should be early September, very, very soon that we find out. My guess is that they will send it back either to another judge, so send it back down, or send it back to Sullivan, but give Sullivan a very narrow remit. And in fact, I thought that is what should have happened right from the start. To go send it back to if you're a judge and if you want to be nice to your colleagues and all these kinds of things, the thing that they should have done, and I think that's probably what's going to happen, is they're going to send it back down, probably Sullivan, maybe another judge, and say, you got to rule on this issue. No hearings, no witnesses, no nothing. You got an issue before you. The DOJ is withdrawing. You either rule yes or you rule no. Make a ruling. And once there's a ruling, then Flynn might. So if it goes back to Sullivan and Sullivan says no, then Flynn will have to appeal again and so on and so forth. Or if it goes back to another judge, the other judge will say, well, yes, the DOJ is withdrawing, so that's it. So the judge approves and that's it. So I think one of those two things is going to happen.
How in the world does a judge act like the prosecutor? This is just beyond me.
Yeah, beyond me too.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Hans. That was a fascinating discussion. I know I've learned a great deal. So thank you all. Thank you, Peter. And remember, if you like the gaggle, like, share, and subscribe.
Thank you.
See you soon.